The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I'm the Director of Advocacy here at Children's Health Defense. And I am honored to be replacing, no one can replace, but to be sitting in for the legendary Polly Tommy for this week with Mary Holland, the CEO of Children's Health Defense. How you doing today, Mary?
I'm great. Thank you for stepping in, Michael. Really appreciate it.
CHD, we have a conference that is coming up November 7th through the 9th. What a lineup. Two sitting senators, Senator Rand Paul, Senator Ron Johnson, Brett Weinstein, Dr. Suzanne Humphries, Russell Brand, Andy Wakefield, on and on and on. We have over 30 confirmed speakers. This is just really exciting. You know, in the past week or so, ticket sales have just been flying. And next Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday, is the end of early bird pricing. Everybody really should get their tickets right away. Mary, tell us a little bit about this conference that's coming up.
Yeah, so this will be our third conference overall, Michael. We didn't do it last year because there was just so much going on kind of politically in the world. So this is the first time in 2 years. And if anybody wasn't at the conference 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they were really amazing. As much for the speakers who are inspiring and dynamic and cutting edge, as for the sense of community that you feel, oh, wow, I'm not alone. I'm going to meet people from my home country, and there are people from overseas or from my home state or my home city. And just the sense of we're doing this. And this year is going to be so amazing, Michael, because we couldn't have dreamed even a year ago at this time in October, we could not have dreamed that Robert Kennedy would be the HHS secretary and that we would actually have people, not everybody, God knows, but we would have people at NIH and FDA and CDC who are really on our side and trying to get to the truth. So it's going to be a celebratory conference, but it's also going to be one where we recognize that we have a unique opportunity right now to get things done, and that our role on the outside of government, pushing them forward, is essential. So it's going to be a really special conference, and we would love to have anybody who's watching right now be there. We look forward to meeting you and to celebrating and to pushing the ball forward. 2026, we're moving into 2026, is going to be a really critical year, Michael. Absolutely critical year in deciding whether our agenda really moves forward with momentum for the next 2 years before the presidential election in 2028.
The point you make is so important, and it's in the title of this conference, Moment of Truth. This really, truly is our moment, not just to reflect on how terrible those of us who fight for medical freedom have been treated, not to just reflect on all the injuries and horror that we've been through. And Mary, you know all so well, and so do I, but to reflect on the fact that now is the moment, now is the time. And what are we going to do? What are we doing? How do we move the ball forward? We're seeing a lot of things that are happening on Capitol Hill, in HHS. But what role do we play? This isn't the time for us to be sleeping. This isn't the time for us to say like, oh,
no,
Bobby's got this, right? This is how we help to activate. Yeah.
100%. It's a key time. And as you said, really tickets are selling out. Tuesday's the end for real of the early bird pricing. We extended it by 1 week. And frankly, I actually think, Michael, we're going to sell out. So if you want to be there, right now, there are not that many tickets left for the dinner on Saturday night. That's going to be with Russell Brand. That's going to be really funny and fun. Yep. So if you want to be there, I would really urge you, buy your ticket now. If you want to come to that dinner, which will be a lot of fun, buy it now, because I do think they're going to be gone by next week.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And the conference is going to be a moment to activate. And speaking of moments to activate, Children's Health Defense, we just helped to lead across this country over 30 rallies calling for thank you RFK, whether it was New York City in front of Pfizer, Chicago, Florida, at the CDC in Atlanta, Children's Health Defense chapters and those who support us went out having rallies simply saying thank you to the Secretary of HHS for saying things no one would say for the past 40 years in any position of power. They're finally being talked about. We're finally starting to see things move forward. It was a really successful grassroots activation last week.
Yeah, that was fantastic. But I want to go back for 1 second, Michael, to the conference. And that is that it's not possible for everybody, especially if you have constraints, especially children who have special needs. It may be impossible for you to get to the conference. We do have a live streaming option. I think it's
Yes.
$77 for both days. So I think affordable, and you will be able to get that. So even if you can't come to Austin, and I certainly am sympathetic for people not being able to travel, or it just being unaffordable right now, consider getting that live stream option, because it will still give you that feeling of connectedness and that feeling of like I'm hearing it firsthand right now in this moment of truth. So anyway, I just wanted to say that, but yes, the rallies were fantastic. In this article that we're mentioning about it, Michael, there's photographs from a rally in front of Pfizer in New York, in front of the CDC in Atlanta, all over my local area, Nanuet, New York. There was a rally that was fantastic. And we do need to both hold the Secretary, Bobby Kennedy, accountable, and we're not going to stop doing that. But we also need to support him, because we do know that he is about radical transparency and having gold standard science. And if people haven't watched, I don't think this is in our show today, Michael, but his 7-minute video responding to Senator Maria Cantwell, explaining that no, vaccines are not why we don't have infectious disease today. It's nutrition, it's sanitation, it's lifestyle. It's a fantastic 7-minute video, and I strongly urge people to watch it.
Yeah, I never thought we were going to see somebody in a position of power say those words and cite those facts. And it is really remarkable that we were able to hear the Secretary of HHS lay that out. Just wrapping up on the rallies, there was mainstream coverage of the rally at the CDC in Atlanta. There was one report that was actually pretty fair and balanced that was published, but then there was the Mother Jones piece where the headline actually compared peaceful protesters to the gunmen who killed an officer, sadly and tragically, at the CDC. I'm sorry, shame on Kiara Butler, the reporter, quote unquote reporter, who did this. There was no violence in a single rally that we had. We promoted these as peaceful actions. Everybody stuck to that. And here they are just trying to spin and make us seem like quote unquote anti-vaxxers, which is, just slander in and of itself, and to conflate us with violence when there was no violence. It actually is something that actually gets me quite upset.
Well, there's no surprise there, Michael, that what the mainstream has been trying to do, or the deep state, whatever you want to call it, is conflate protests around vaccines with violence, and to basically be in a position to brand us as domestic terrorists. And
Yep.
that was, largely derailed in 2024 with the national elections. But that narrative, that trope is still there. And sadly, Mother Jones has just been outrageous and vicious, and completely distorting who we are and what we're about. We're about gold standard science. We're about informed consent. We're not going to take away or tell anybody what they should do with their own body, but we want people to be able to have accurate information and a real choice, not a coerced choice to make about their own bodies. It's tragic to me, actually, Michael, and bizarre that an organization that stands for choice and liberation and freedom should be so anti-medical freedom. It boggles my mind, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I hear you. Sticking with the CDC, the Defender had a story. CDC data manipulation is still alive and well, even under RFK Jr. from the Brownstone Institute. Why don't you speak to this, Mary?
Yeah, this is a great piece by Peter Gutcha, who used to run the Cochrane collaboration. So this is an MD scientist, very extensive credentials, who, to his credit, was an expert in litigation against Merck's Gardasil. And in that, he uncovered pervasive scientific misconduct. And he's explaining in this article, a year ago, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, with a different set of experts than is the case today, but they approved a respiratory syncytial virus monoclonal antibody shot for babies. And there are lots and lots of serious health problems that have apparently led to death for some babies with that monoclonal antibody shot. And the ACIP now was considering a very similar version of this drug, this injection made by Sanofi Pasteur. And Gutcha is pointing out that the same problems are with the Sanofi as with Merck, and that Merck was misrepresenting science to CDC, and CDC looked the other way. And Gutcha here is commending one of the new members of ACIP, Retsef Levy, a professor at MIT, for actually dissenting from the decision to approve the Sanofi. And Gutcha points out that the CDC Foundation, which is millions and millions of private dollars that go to the CDC for its operations, are a huge conflict of interest, and that unfortunately we cannot yet take CDC science at face value, despite what the president and the secretary of HHS are trying to do.
We're still seeing an ongoing war between, the president, secretary of HHS, and CDC, and doesn't seem like that war is over yet. Stay tuned here as all of those developments happen. The FDA knew that the risk of Tylenol was always there. Why don't you speak to this? Tylenol, FDA knew about autism risk for years, newly surfaced emails show.
Yeah. So this one is so sad, and it really speaks to some of the fundamental problems in the world that we have with captured regulators. So this is internal emails that have become available through Freedom of Information, thank you, between Johnson & Johnson executives, who wrote in 2008, they already expressed concerns about Tylenol and an autism risk. But then there's this one email in 2018 where they say, we should really avoid sticking our necks out. We don't want to confirm bad news. And then another email in 2023 where they say they explicitly have neurological, concerns about neurological issues in babies and urogenital issues. And they say, we should really suppress this because, quote unquote, it touches every aspect of the brand, unquote. And you just think, oh my God, you would put a brand name above babies' health, which is obvious, but it's so chilling to see this in black and white, Michael. And then last but not least, a friend to CHD, Dr. David Healy, a psychiatrist who is been very active in cases related to the pharmaceutical industry. He says, the duty for them to warn doesn't come when there's 100% certainty. The duty to warn comes when they think there might be a problem, and then let people make up their own minds. But this Tylenol issue is very serious.
Continuing on with the Tylenol issue, there are lawsuits that are out surrounding Tylenol. Families behind hundreds of Tylenol lawsuits ask courts to let the experts testify. Talk to us about this, Mary.
There have been hundreds of cases against the current manufacturer of Tylenol, Kenvue. Used to be J&J, it's now Kenvue. And basically, the case was recently dismissed here in New York City by the Southern District of New York Federal Court. But the case is on appeal now to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. And tomorrow, October 6th, there is oral argument in this case. And the plaintiffs, the people representing the victims of Tylenol and autism, are saying, look, This is you dismissed this case, Judge, saying that the science was unreliable, but Health and Human Services and the president have just relied on this science. It would really be a separation of powers issue if you, the courts, think that you can supersede what the executive branch is saying is reliable science. So it's interesting, the New York Times is blatantly going out and saying Tylenol is safe, take it in pregnancy, there's no issue. And as Paul Thacker, a really important investigative journalist in our space, is saying, we have to understand that the New York Times is really not a vehicle for the news, it's a vehicle for a political agenda. And that agenda remains in the mainstream media to protect pharma because it provides so much of the funding for mainstream media.
RFK to add autism symptoms to VICP, to the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. Talk about this, Mary.
I want to be a little careful here because we really don't know yet what's going to come out. So we do know that Kennedy has said it is reprehensible that in the past, the government has gaslit and completely ignored the people who've been victims of vaccine injury. And we know that he wants to turn that around. And we know that he's appointed a lawyer who has served in the injury compensation program, Andrew Downing, to review and revise the table of injuries. In other words, what in this compensation program do we sort of preliminarily assume might be an injury from vaccines if it happens within a certain period of time based on peer-reviewed science. But we don't know a lot about what that's going to look at. But this is a great article quoting James Lyons Weiler, a scientist in the health freedom space, and Wayne Rohde, arguably really the best expert out there on the injury compensation program. And I think as James Lyons Weiler says at the end of this article, the era of denialism about the reality of vaccine injury is over. And we are clearly going to see major changes, but I think it's premature, Michael, for us to contemplate what those changes are.
In the United Kingdom, we are seeing a digital ID scheme, thank God, is facing backlash over surveillance fears. Is a similar plan coming to the US? We just saw in UK an announcement that if you don't have digital ID, you will not be allowed to work. And Mary, this just reminds me so much. I wasn't allowed to work because I didn't get a shot as a New York City teacher during COVID. But in a lot of ways, this one's more dangerous than the shot going over to, and it doesn't feel dangerous. It just feels like, be on my phone. It'll be a little QR code or something. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, this is a great article. If you read one article this week, I would really recommend that you read this one about the digital ID rolling out in the UK. And of course, it's not the first country. This is already really well established in China. It's really well established in India, and it's really on its way in Canada and in the United States. The Real ID in states is the gateway to digital ID, a national digital ID in the United States. So there's a lot of quotes in this article from Mr. Bruner, who wrote the book, The Controligarchs. I love that term. And he says, voluntary today becomes mandatory tomorrow. And I really want to point out Bobby Kennedy's speech at Defeat the Mandates, where he says, if there is a digital ID, everything that you think today is a right, your free exercise of religion, your freedom of speech, your freedom of assembly, it becomes a privilege because the government can turn you off. Yeah. You can't get your job. You can't get on a train. You can't get on a plane. You can't leave your 15-minute city. Everything that we consider, hold so dear as rights, as constitutional rights, can overnight with a digital ID be turned into privileges, just like is the case in India and China.
They are putting in place all of these technological mechanisms for control we've never seen before. It's been the ambition of every totalitarian state from the beginning of mankind to control every aspect of behavior, of conduct, of thought, and to obliterate dissent. The mechanisms are being put in place that will make it so none of us can run and none of us can hide. You have a series of rights, as flawed as our government is. You can still go out and go to a bar, you can go to a sporting event, you can get on a bus or an airplane and you can travel. You have certain freedoms. You can get educated, etc. Every right that you have is transformed into a privilege contingent upon your obedience to arbitrary government dictates. It will make you a slave.
I think this is such an important thing. I was very happy to see, honestly, I didn't know this, Michael, that Senator Rand Paul, who will be at our conference in November, has a bill, S2769, to repeal the Real ID Act in the United States, which is the pathway in the US towards a digital ID. Also, I was pretty shocked in this article to learn that Switzerland, by just over 50%, has approved a digital ID, but there are questions about election fraud there. This is definitely an issue we have to be focused on, and I'm very excited at our conference in November. We will have a panel with Catherine Austin Fitts, Dr. Merrill Nass, Ray Flores, to talk about digital ID, where it is and where it's going.
You know, I happen to know at the Religious Liberty Commission that's ongoing in DC recently, there were some behind the scenes talks about, hey, are you looking at how digital ID might infringe on religious liberties? A very interesting conversation, too much to get into here.
Yeah.
But that is something that people are not paying enough attention to as well.
Just look at China and Falun Gong, Michael. I mean, absolutely, the social credit score system is used for repression of religious rights in China, 100%. So the digital ID is something, I think it's a little bit hard to grasp because it's unfamiliar to us. In countries where you had to show your passport, World War II, show your papers, people get it. I think in the United States, because we've never had the system where you absolutely have to show your papers for elections. You have to for driving, but other than that, you know, and now credit cards. So people are a little more aware, but it hasn't been used in this oppressive way where it really has been used in Western Europe and in Eastern Europe for decades,
right?
Or, you know, before the war. So I think we do need to really create greater awareness about the risks of digital ID.
I think it's a great point. Credit cards and everything digitized is like more freedom in America. Like that's how it's sold to us, right? Lab grown milk to replace breast milk. Hey, and no problems with this one, right, Mary? This one's going to be great.
Oh, God. You can't make it up. You know, if you remember in Brave New World, they talk about babies being created in test tubes, and they're working on that too. But you know, there's no substitute for breast milk. And this is a terrific piece by the Alliance for Natural Health, just pointing out that breast milk is dynamic. It responds to the baby and the state of development of the baby. It's from the individual mother to the individual baby. But already in the US, breastfeeding in the first 6 months is only 25% of moms. In the UK, it's 1%. Which is shocking to me. The infant formula market in 2024 was $81 billion. So I think here also we need greater awareness of the problems of not breastfeeding your baby.
Yes.
And I'm excited that we at CHD on Mondays have Mothers to Be, where we're really talking about these issues for pregnant moms and early infancy, because those are critical periods. You know, we know that.
Fake sugar science was put out to support fluoride. Now, I have to admit, I didn't read this one, but that headline really caught me. Tell me a little bit about this, Mary.
Oh man, this is a fabulous article by our Crackerjack reporter, Brenda Belletti, and it's based on a new piece that was just published in Environmental Health by a Dr. Norath. And it's really about how the sugar industry got behind the fluoride scam to divert attention from sugar as being the real problem with cavities in kids' teeth in particular. And they talk about the creation, which is an analogy in my mind to so many things in the vaccine space, to the Sugar Research Foundation. And the Sugar Research Foundation, sort of like the tobacco research industry, and they got on board the dentists. And what this article makes clear is, you know, just like the pediatricians, Michael, the dentists were largely unaware of how scandalous this pseudoscience was. And, you know, I have to say at the end, I looked at the original article by Dr. Norath, and he dedicates it to the memory of a physician who was really fighting for the truth. And he kind of adapts a motto from another really important doctor in the environmental health space, Dr. Seligman. And the adaptation is corporations are human beings with empathy washed away. And that's what we just saw when we were just talking about the Tylenol scam, right? Is like corporations are like, oh, all that matters is the brand. All that matters is our shareholders' revenue. It's like normal human couldn't do that, but as a corporation, they're willing to do it.
The next headline from the Defender is Trump strikes drug price deal with Pfizer, announces Trump RX website for consumers. Talk to us about this.
Hi, Michael. I don't think we know the whole story here, but I can't tell you I was happy to see Albert Bourla, CEO of Pfizer, standing there with President Trump and Bobby Kennedy, saying, you know, they were slapping one another on the back. Oh, we love each other, blah, blah, blah. And $70 billion allegedly Pfizer is investing in the U.S. Allegedly, pharma is investing $500 billion in infrastructure developments. We're going to lower prices for U.S. citizens of drugs. But at the same time, no details were made available, Michael. And, you know, no mention of the deaths or harms from Pfizer's COVID shots. So it was troubling. I think it's not the whole story of what's really going on. Pfizer stock was tanking. I think it sort of suggests there was a realignment in where Pfizer and the US government are. You know, during COVID, I think we saw Pfizer kind of telling the government what to do, give us more money, give us your billions. Now it's the US government saying, Pfizer, give us your 70 billion. There's a sort of a realignment that it suggests, but candidly, I'm troubled by it. I don't know what it means. I hope that there's more going on behind the scenes than we know.
Defender also followed up on this in terms of FOIA requests that are going forward in regards to this. Secrecy over Trump-Pfizer deal sparks FOIA demands and public outcry. Kind of speaks to exactly what you just said.
Public Citizen and ICANN have already filed FOIAs. That's great. We don't know what's really going on here between Pfizer's alleged investment, Trump RX. Is Trump getting money from this? We don't really know what the story is yet. And unfortunately, the Freedom of Information Act is slow. This does not speak to radical transparency, which is what we know that the HHS secretary is calling for. So I was not happy about that press conference.
And, you know, in the press conference, Bobby Kennedy, Secretary Kennedy, did make sure to highlight how much of a Trump project this was. He said multiple times, President Trump was leaning on all of us to make sure that this one happened. And Trump was smiling about that. You know, he seemed to have no problem taking credit for it, you know?
Yeah. And I think reducing drug prices for Americans is a big achievement,
Yes.
Michael, and sort of the most favored nation status of Americans purchasing drugs is a big achievement, right? We are paying, you know, multiples of what people in Canada or in Western Europe pay for drugs. And so that is absolutely an achievement. And I think the threat of tariffs was clearly a part of that. But I just think that the phalanx between pharma and the regulators and the executive branch is not something we at Children's Health Defense want to see continue. We want to see the regulators actually regulate pharma and not be in bed with them. So it was a troubling press conference, and I don't think I don't want to sugarcoat that, so to speak.
Yeah, we'll be continuing to follow that closely. Another issue we follow closely, censorship. In California, guilt by algorithm. California bill would expand online censorship, critics warns.
This was also a really strong article. And what I really liked here is pretty mainstream groups, Reclaim the Net, are saying that this is censorship rebranded as civil rights. That is a very powerful statement. The people who are really advocating for this bill that's on Governor Newsom's desk are the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which is itself a disinformation censorship organization that was calling for black ops against Bobby Kennedy a year ago. So we know that key leaders in the United States and the World Economic Forum, they want an end to the First Amendment free speech right in the United States and free press rights in the United States. And sadly, American political leaders, John Kerry, Hillary Clinton at World Economic Forum, have talked about the dangers of the First Amendment free speech right, which I just find appalling, honestly. So this is a really troubling bill. And we will definitely be following this. As you know, Michael, we have several lawsuits against censorship, against the government, against mainstream media. We've had cases against social media. As Bobby Kennedy always used to say, the censors are never on the right side of history, ever. And I really take that to heart. Censorship is something that we will fight hard against, tooth and nail, especially in the health freedom space.
Mary, the First Amendment is definitely dangerous. It's dangerous to corrupt, powerful entities that want to hold on to that power. We have one last headline here about the MAHA moms. This one made it into mainstream media. Who are the MAHA moms? They're feeling heard by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And some of your friends are quoted in this article. Talk to us about that.
Well, our CHD friend, so Claire Dooley, who you'll see right now in the Geoengineering Report, is quoted, as is her mom, Militia Dooley. So Claire is a second generation MAHA mom, essentially, and talking about how up until now, moms have been gaslit about the hazards of vaccines. And in that press conference where President Trump and Bobby Kennedy were talking about not only Tylenol, but the hazards of vaccination in conjunction with autism, that was really, really powerful. And so this is actually a very sympathetic article in USA Today, which I consider to be a very mainstream publication.
Yes.
This is a sympathetic piece, and it's talking about not only vaccines, but Tylenol and food. It mentions Vani Hari. So these are moms who are really leading the way. These are younger moms, and really, this is a really sympathetic article. So Michael, it does show us how the culture is really shifting on these issues.
Oh, I definitely think so. We're definitely seeing the mainstream media has no choice but to pay attention to us, to quote us. When we did the Thank You RFK rallies, Politico announced it over a week beforehand in a straight hard news piece. When have we seen Politico really do something like that? Mary, that's all of the headlines. But before we go to the Geoengineering Report, CHD has just launched our $1 million match. Why don't you talk to people about that?
Yeah, we have $1 million matches twice a year, and they are critical to our bottom line. If you like watching this or listening to it, if you like reading Defender, watching CHD TV, coming to the conference, following us on social media, you make it happen. We can't do it without contributions. We can't do it without money. This is a great time in the month of October where other donors have already committed $1 million to us, and you can match that. And it's a way of showing your support and showing all of our staff. And we have a lot of staff across these different areas that you care about this, you value what we're doing. It's important to keep it going. And we're incredibly grateful to be here and to be able to do this work. And the only reason that we can do this in the way that we're doing this is because of you.
100%. And the advocacy work that we're doing, headed to Washington, D.C., having voices of the vaccine injured hearings with Senator Johnson in Congress, holding rallies across the country. None of it happens without you. None of it happens without your support for Children's Health Defense. Mary Holland, thank you so much for breaking down the most critical news of the week this week. We so appreciate you.
We're missing Polly, but we're very happy that she's visiting family in the UK. But it would not be This Week with Mary and Polly if we didn't say, pray big, stand firm, never settle. What is the evidence that silver iodide is being used to spray our skies? The patent for silver iodide is on your website, geoengineeringwatch.org. Tell us, what is silver iodide and is it being sprayed?
That's used, again, that's another method of confusion to try to bamboozle the public as to what's localized, publicized cloud seeding operations and what's climate engineering. The two are completely different. It's an ant compared to an elephant. So the localized cloud seeding operation, single engine propeller driven airplane with a few flares on the wings that might disperse 5 or 10 pounds of total material in a payload, compared to a military tanker like a KC-135 that can carry up to 100 tons in a single payload at lower altitudes. I just spoke in front of legislators in Wyoming, and this subject came up, and there was confusion even in their circles as to what's localized cloud seeding? What's climate engineering? So they're trying to use localized cloud seeding operations where silver iodide is a factor and trying to blend the two in a way that confuses the population. So very separate, also toxic, but it's not the mountain of material that's coming down with climate engineering operations that are bioavailable, refined, free-form aluminum in the tens of millions of tons literally in our air column. And that is so detrimental to all life forms. We're seeing death of everything from soil microbiome to cloud microbes. Again, this is an all-out assault against every living organism.
So Dane, in your view, is it the aluminum that is the most toxic and most kind of bioactive chemical that is being sprayed? Is that your sense of things?
That's what we have seen. Although, as Clayton alluded to, also we have a synergistic toxicity. So we all have mercury in us now too, from the incineration of the carbon fuels I mentioned before. And there appears to be a base material used in these operations of coal fly ash, which contains even more mercury and radioactive isotopes as well. So in addition to aluminum being the single largest toxic component that we know of from the testing we've done, we have all these other components that create synergistic toxicity. So it's quite a plethora, Mary, and that synergistic toxicity is extremely bad, Clayton. Would you agree with that, Clayton?
Oh, I agree 100%. And I think that, aluminum, I think it seems to me, and I'm piggybacking on work by you and others on this, but it seems that that's the single largest burden in the air column and so on. Dane said there's a host of things that have been used at one time or another, and they synergistically are toxic to us, to plants, to animals. And so I think that, one point that Dane made that really stuck in my head that he made just a few moments ago was that, we really shouldn't have aerosolized metals in our air, period. It's insanity. I mean, there's no reason for us to have particulate matter with molecular level aluminum compounds, barium compounds, strontium compounds, mercury compounds, anything. And this is not natural. This is something that can happen to a limited extent during a large volcanic explosion, but this is not natural. This is destroying life on the earth. It's poisonous to life on the earth. And that's really where I would like to jump at, is say, look, it's not just aluminum, although aluminum is probably the single greatest elemental burden. It's insanity to be injecting aerosolized heavy metals into our atmosphere. It's just absolute insanity, whether it's through industry or whether it's through even more insane, because we're not getting anything good out of it, through geoengineering. And so I think that would be an avenue of where perhaps we can make some progress with people. I don't know. What do you think, Dane?
If I could elaborate on everything Clayton stated and why that is not reported. It's more cover-up, just like the condensation trail narrative. When it's not condensation, it's a sprayed aerosol dispersion. The entire air quality air testing system is designed not to show this mountain of nanoparticle matter. From meetings in the state capitol with top EP officials arranged by congressional reps, I've been told to my face that the system is designed not to show this toxin. They test generally for PM10, occasionally for PM2.5, never for nanoparticulate matter, and they're told to test for combustion particulates only. The rest of the sample goes, in their words, out the window. So again, this mountain of most toxic nanoparticle matter goes completely unreported. People have no idea why they're having so many respiratory issues. Again, the smaller the particle, the more harmful it is, regardless of the element, as Clayton correctly stated. When you had toxic elements on top of that, worse still. And one example of synergistic toxicity, in the case of mercury and aluminum, we have peer-reviewed study to confirm how bad the synergistic toxicity is with those two metals. We all have both in us now. It increases the overall toxicity by as much as 10,000%, 100 times worse. So people have no idea how lethal this mix is, and we're sucking it up with every breath we take.
My name's Kimberly Biss, and I am an obstetrician gynecologist that practices here in the state of Florida.
And we're going to talk about pregnancy and the COVID shots.
Correct.
And how do you know about that?
How do I know about the pregnancy
Yeah,
and
how do you
COVID
know,
shot?
before you start talking about this, what qualifications or research have you done, just so we can tell our viewers?
Okay, so I have no research publications to my name. It's just that I have been practicing for 25 plus years. And if you include my residency training, I've probably taken care of about 8,000 pregnant women. So there are things that I'm seeing now that I've not seen in the past. And it all started when we started the COVID injections.
Okay, talk us through what you're seeing and educate us, please.
Sure. So in November of 2021, I had a non-clinical staff member come up to me and say, Dr. Biss, you realize we've had 8 miscarriages this month, and in a practice of mine that delivers 20 to 25 patients a month, having 8 miscarriages is a huge number. So I started to loosely track the data, but a year ago this month, I went back to January of 2020 up till November of 2022, and I had tracked not only the miscarriages we had in our practice, but also the newly entering pregnant moms. And what I had seen was our miscarriage rates had doubled from year to year, and our newly registering obstetric patients had been going down from year to year. Those are people that call they're newly pregnant in the first trimester. And that's either a reflection of them losing their pregnancies early or infertility, which has increased since these injections. So the miscarriage rate from month to month in January, or in the year 2020, for my practice was 4%. You will hear and read in obstetric textbooks that the normal miscarriage rate is 13 to 15%, which I've never seen clinically. Recent literature about 4 years ago actually showed that the normal miscarriage rate in the first trimester is about 5 to 6%. I've not really seen that either. That's a little higher than what I've seen. But my average month-to-month miscarriage rate in 2020 was 4%. In 2021, it doubled to 7 to 8%, and it peaked in November of that year when my staff member brought it to my attention. And in 2022, it went up again to 15% on average month to month. In December of 2022, it was about 27%, and in January and February of this year, it was 30%. Did not normalize back down to 4% until June of this year. And what's concerning is the majority of my patients who had received the injections, that was done in 2021 and early 2022. Very few had gotten more than 3 shots. So we're still seeing some lingering effects, even though it was so, long ago at this point.
Now, are these miscarriages at the time that you would normally see a miscarriage, or are they later? Because we're hearing of later.
Yeah, so the later miscarriage, like early in the second trimester, would be more related to blood clotting issues. Usually people that have lupus, that's kind of what happens with them. I have not seen a lot of those, I will be honest. Most are in the first trimester, like about 6 to 8 to 10 weeks.
And these people have got the COVID shots at some point, either during their pregnancy or before their pregnancy. When are you seeing that?
So most of them, it's hard to track that exactly, but obviously the ones I was seeing in 2022 and in this year, they hadn't even received any injections. They would have been received back in 2021. So something is still going on that's allowing them to possibly have a miscarriage. I will tell you that 60 to 65% of my obstetric population got the injections. It's primarily Pfizer. It's about 70% to 30% Moderna. I don't have it exactly to where everybody that I've tracked, I've known that they were vaccinated, what brand it was, because sadly in my practice, I'm the only one that asks all of my gynecology patients if they've had any injections, what type, when, have you had COVID, because whether we like it or not, that's part of your medical history now. And if we don't have that data in their chart already, and they show up with a pregnancy loss, it's hard to ask them that information then, because you don't want to come off as accusatory and make them feel like they caused the loss of their baby.
Or leading them.
Correct.
I have a question for you. You may not be able to answer this. So one of the other things we're seeing a lot of, or hearing a lot of, particularly in the military, is the mothers did not get any of the shots, but the fathers did. And we are seeing an unusual amount of miscarriages in that group as well. Have you seen anything? You know anything about that? I presume would mean shedding. I don't know.
Yeah, so we definitely feel that shedding is a concept because a lot of women that had the menstrual disorders, they didn't all get vaccinated themselves, but they had been around other people that had been vaccinated. Pfizer, if you were enrolled in the early Pfizer trials and you were a male, you were told to wear 2 condoms because obviously they knew something may be transmitted to the female in bodily fluids. So I don't have that ability to track all that. I don't ask my patients if their partners or husbands have been vaccinated. So.
Okay, so on another subject that you may know about, we're also getting reports, and that actually first alerted me to it was another OBGYN that came and talked to us, 2 others actually, that we're seeing babies born from vaccinated parents, as in the COVID shot parents that have abnormalities. Are you seeing that or not?
So I have not seen any increase in my patient population with birth defects or having any issues. I did have one very strange delivery. The mom was triple vaccinated with Pfizer, had an uneventful pregnancy, uneventful delivery. 45 minutes later, the baby crumped respiratory wise, had to go to the NICU. They couldn't ventilate the baby. The baby actually had to go on ECMO, which for people listening is like bypass. The blood of the baby was being oxygenated by a machine, and then it went back into the baby. The baby survived, but there has yet to be any explanation for why any of that happened. And the baby doesn't have any genetic problem. There's no metabolic issue. It was very bizarre. That's the only weird thing as far as a baby goes that I've had. Now, I will tell you, we are seeing, and this is a reflection of not very healthy placentas. We're seeing a lot more preeclampsia, which is high blood pressure in pregnancy. We're seeing a lot more low amniotic fluid volumes around the babies. So both of those conditions are making us induce or deliver moms prior to when they're due. So some of them are preterm. My concern is we're seeing a lot of postpartum hemorrhaging. Women that bleed within the first 24 hours after delivery. And the normal maneuvers we use or the medicines we use to stop the bleeding are not always working. I had to do a hysterectomy on a woman in August because we couldn't stop her bleeding. And I will tell you, just for perspective, there are OBGYNs that practice their whole career having never done a hysterectomy on a woman they just delivered their baby. It's not a commonly done procedure. So there's something going on in the uterus where it's not allowing it to contract normally, and these women are bleeding more.
So sad.
It's very scary. It almost makes me scared to go and do a delivery because I'm always afraid my patient's going to bleed now. It's become that common. And my anesthesia colleagues have brought that to my attention. It's not just the obstetricians noticing this now, because usually these people require surgery and the anesthesia personnel are involved.
It's interesting you say that. I spoke to a midwife, would not come on the bus, but I just speak to her, and she said that she is afraid to do home births with the COVID people who've taken the COVID shots. She won't take them.
Yeah.
Because of the issues that she's seeing.
Yeah.
So that sort of tallies up with that. All right, can we talk a little bit about infertility, because we
Yes.
have that problem. There is, and to the point where we get mothers who are struggling, are also struggling to adopt. The adoption agencies are getting reports that they're just 3-year waiting lists, don't even bother, and not enough people coming in to even give babies up for adoption. So something's going on everywhere.
Yeah. Well, globally, you know, the birth rate is down. Some countries are higher than others as far as how the slope is trending. But I will tell you, we had many patients in 2021 and 2022 who had no problems prior We had delivered previous babies of theirs. They had no issues getting pregnant. And now all of a sudden they're either having recurrent miscarriages or they just can't get pregnant at all. And we've had to send them to infertility, and they end up getting in vitro fertilization, or IVF. We know that in these injections, the lipid nanoparticles, which is the fatty envelope around the messenger RNA, does not stay in your arm. The LPNs go all throughout the body. Through FOIA requests, Japanese researchers got the Pfizer rat trial that showed that. And these lipids concentrate in endocrine glands, which the testes and the ovaries are, and was most concentrated in the ovaries. My concern is that this might be a multi-generational problem, because when babies are developing in the womb and they're female, once they hit 20 weeks of gestation, they have all the eggs they will ever have their whole life. Men regenerate their sperm. Women do not regenerate their eggs. As a matter of fact, when a woman runs out of eggs, that's what menopause is. So if these lipid nanoparticles cross the placenta, which I'm sure they do, and they go into a female fetus's body and somehow concentrate in her ovaries, we're not going to know there's a problem until either she doesn't go through puberty, or she goes through puberty but she can't get pregnant later on in life.
So trouble ahead.
Trouble ahead. Maybe.
All right, so I can't let you go without asking you two questions. Number one, at Children's Health Defence, we're extremely concerned by the amount of vaccinations that pregnant women are being offered now.
Yeah.
So RSV, COVID,
Yes.
flu, Tdap, maybe a bit of Rogam, because that seems to be in these days. I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't mean to speak out of turn there, but
Sure.
a flu, I don't know. It goes on, it goes on.
Yeah.
For us, that sounds like a cocktail for death.
Yes, so nobody should get this RSV injection in pregnancy because babies died in the trials. GlaxoSmithKline and Pfizer both got the same. It's not messenger RNA based platform. It's more of a traditional where it's an antigen. Both companies got the same antigen. GlaxoSmithKline studied it on 5,000 women. They saw more fetal deaths in the vaccinated arm as compared to the placebo, primarily due to it causing premature labor and delivery. So they halted the study and they decided to not put the product out. Pfizer took 100 women, had the same statistics, but then turned around and said, well, we can't really say anything about the deaths because the study was small. They presented all this to the FDA, they got a stamp of approval, and American College of OBGYN, CDC, chief medical officers of women's groups are now telling their people to give these injections to pregnant women. With the theory with any vaccine in a pregnant woman is that you'll give them the vaccine, they'll make antibodies which cross the baby into the baby, and then when the baby's born, the baby will have antibodies to whatever you're vaccinating the mom for. Because we're always chasing antibodies, but we should all know by now there's much more to an immune system than just antibodies. But who knows if maybe all these flu vaccines we've been given in the past, the Tdaps, we don't know what causes preterm labor. Maybe it's those injections.
And I need to ask you about the HPV Gardasil shot
Yes.
as well, because, well, this is our,
Yes, I've
mean,
seen his story.
the 10-year-old girl there, we haven't put that story out yet because they're in court. She only died last year from one Gardasil. So my point is why is it still on the market? We don't have the science behind it. We don't, all the claims that people say you won't get cancer, we don't have.
No,
That's not true. So
You're
why,
right.
and people are dying.
people are dying, and
Ovaries are being shut down. Young girls are going through menopause. This is the most injurious vaccine that we have on the market in my mind.
maybe related to endometriosis too. And I will tell you, the silver lining for me with COVID was that it opened my eyes, and I've done a lot of self-reflection. And I just hope that I didn't harm anybody. But yes, in the OBGYN world, Gardasil is our vaccine. And knowing what I know now, it's just a shame how we were all just misled. I mean, Merck never proved in their trials that they prevented cancer. And I see plenty of women who have abnormal pap smears that have had the series of the injections. The concern now is they're expanding this to everybody because HPV is associated with a lot of oral cancers. So now they're going to want everybody to get it. And they may even start giving it to babies. I mean, it's crazy. Cervical cancer is now on the rise. And I think it's because we stopped doing annual pap smears. Kaiser was the one that did the big trial that, you know, in 2011 told us all we don't need to do a pap smear on everybody. I'm back to doing annual paps on all my patients. I'm not going to follow those guidelines anymore, and I haven't recommended Gardasil to anybody, I want to say, in maybe, I don't know, 6 years.
Thank you. And also, I think it's important to say that we were all lied to. Doctors, nurses, mothers, fathers, grandparents. It's all of us. We've all been lied to. There's no shame in us saying this is what happened to us. You know, medical training, sponsored by Big Pharma. You know, it's happened to us all, and we need to all stand together, no matter where we are, and say we've all been lied to.
Right.
And I just think you're an amazing doctor. So you're sitting here and you're warning us all about what you know, and I don't know. I just thank you so much.
Well, thank you for allowing me to speak.